Hi friends, welcome to today's video. If you're new here, which this is a new channel, so welcome. If this is your first time here, my name is Angel and I make videos every week around the topic of religious trauma. So if that interests you, go ahead and click like and subscribe and then ring the little bell. Like I said, I'm going to be doing these every week because this is a really interesting topic for me. And if you don't know, I grew up in a cult called the Children of God, which was super religious and really very culty, as cults are. But I want to talk more about the remedy and like the things that we have to go through in order to heal from that trauma. And today I'm going to talk about forgiveness. Because growing up in any sort of religion, I don't know if it's every single religion, but most of them will have a component of forgiveness. And I think that the way that it's used, the way that I understood it, it was never used to mean actual forgiveness. It was usually used to enable the person who was hurting you to continue doing it. And so I had a really hard time. I didn't grasp the concept of forgiveness until much, much later. And even now, it's a weird thing to try and wrap my head around, but I do think that it is useful, and I just wanted to come on here and talk about how I view it now and what it means to me now versus how it was used then. And I Googled some articles because I wanted to hear about forgiveness from different sorts of religions, because the religion that I'm the most familiar with is Christianity. And there was this whole readout. There was like an 8-step, there was this one article. It was this 8 steps on how to forgive someone. And one of the things, it was like, start by smiling, forgive them, think nice thoughts about them, buy them a gift. And I was just like, are you out of your ever loving mind? And for me, that brings up all the stuff like, this is the wrong way to do it. Not that there's like a right way to forgive, but like that to me doesn't seem like forgiveness. That to me is the cycle I was in that enabled my abusers to continue on, with me feeling like it was my fault if I was hurt, and what they needed from me is forgiveness. And I needed to suppress myself and suppress my hurt in order to not make them feel bad that they hurt me, which again, once you leave that, that's a really nice brain setup for an abusive relationship or for an abusive work environment or toxic friendships. So I think it's important to look at the brain, the way that the brain processes what forgiveness is, and also to look at your own boundaries of what you like, the things that you forgive people for, and the amount of times that you do it, and kind of what your concept of forgiveness is. So that is what I'm talking about right now. And there are a few things, there are a few ways that forgiveness goes wrong. And I wrote it out on the whiteboard where I was like, if you forgive people, sometimes forgiveness requires, again, suppression of yourself and the things that you actually wish that you could say and you could do, but that's inappropriate. So you be quiet and you shut yourself down and you tell the person, oh, I forgive you. Or you were made to tell them. A lot of times I was made to tell people, like, I have to go tell them that I forgive them, or I get another beating, or I'm shunned. So my only option is to go tell this person I forgive you. So I can say, like, I say the words, like the words are always fine. They're just words. So I can go say, I forgive you. But then what that did from that point on out was not enable me to say like, hey, this is upsetting me, or hey, I still don't understand why that happened, or whatever it is. So forgiveness, and then the next step is suppression of myself, which then led to like a lot of anxiety because I would still have to interact with this person, but I didn't feel safe around them. But in their head, I've forgiven them. And in my head, I'm like, I have to suppress myself. I can't be angry because I've forgiven them. So then the byproduct of that is me having to live with this anxiety from having to be around this person who I was forced to forgive. And really all that did was have the ability for us to be in the room together, or the ability for us to work together, was dependent on how much I can suppress myself under the guise of forgiveness. So like that's not good. And the result of that was anxiety for me, which obviously made me like incredibly stressed. And it was just not a good thing. And that is not what forgiveness is. The other thing that I've also seen and done and experienced on both ends is the idea of forgiveness coming from superiority, where you're like, you know what, like, you're a sinner, so you don't know what you're doing because you're just sinning all the time. So I forgive you. Um, and there's this one girl that I really disliked, and she had like tried to take my boyfriend from me, as one does when you're like 19, and I hated her. I did not like her. I hated her. I was very hormonal, as teenagers are. Um, and she was going to come to the commune that I was in. She had decided to visit in an attempt to again try and steal my boyfriend from me, and so I was livid. But again, I couldn't say anything, and I was trying to find a way because I knew I couldn't stop her coming, and she was just going to be there, and I was going to have to see her and coexist with her, and like play nice and be Christian. Um, and again with the suppression, but the way that I did it this time is in my head, I was like, you know what? She's a sinner. Like, she's so stupid. She doesn't know what she's doing. So I'm gonna forgive her for her stupidity. And then she came, and I had like, the deadpan face on, being like, hi, so nice to meet you. I forgive you. Um, and in that case, it was just this feeling of superiority of like, you know what, you don't know what you're doing. And I'm going to be like Christ and understand that you're a sinner. And I'm going to be up here and you're down here. And I forgive you for being so low that you can't possibly understand what it's like to be up here. And then that turns into resentment. Like, I resented this person so much, and I resented myself for not being able to say, like, you know what, I don't want you here. Like, I don't like you, or like, I don't want to see you. I couldn't say those things because I wasn't allowed to express my emotions. So in this case, the forgiveness came out through a sense of superiority, which then turned into resentment, which again is also unhealthy and will take a toll over time. And I think growing up in any sort of like church or religious environment, a lot of this stuff is taught to you in one of those forms, either forgiveness through suppression of yourself or forgiveness through superiority. And again, if you're doing the suppression, it leads to anxiety. And if you're doing the superiority approach, it leads to resentment. Because why are you made to be around this sinner all of the time? And all of it is this sort of environment where you're continually selling yourself short. And then at some point you're going to have to forgive yourself for selling yourself short, but that's like not even a concept that enters your head yet. And in thinking about it and thinking about like, what is the right way to forgive someone? I think for me, and of course this is all, if it helps, keep it. If not, leave it alone. But the way that I understand it now, the question that I ask myself is, what boundary do I need to put in place in order to forgive this person? Because what I do not think forgiveness is just saying the words and then suppressing yourself, or saying the words and then allowing the behavior to continue. For me, if I'm going to forgive someone, it's going to come with a boundary. And I've been able to forgive people in my life, but I'm no longer speaking to a lot of them. Or I've been able to forgive people, but they are no longer in my life at the capacity that they were before they required the forgiveness for whatever event. And I do think that the ability to forgive is a good thing, but I do always believe that it's personal. I've been in situations where people want me to forgive on their timeline. I had somebody who was very close to me. They wanted to have a family reunion. And I said, I don't really want to see this person who's going to be at the family reunion. I just don't care to see them. And they were like, Angel, like, you've held on long enough. Like, forgive this person already. It's been years. And for me, I was like, you can't do that. You can't rush forgiveness. You can't expect me to process trauma on your timeline because I'm messing up your idea of whatever thing that you're trying to create. And I think that I've experienced that a lot of times, where people want you to heal when it's convenient for them. And it's important to let yourself know that you do not need to do that. Your healing process, should you choose to forgive somebody, that's your business. That's your timeline. The way that you process that is all on you. Forgiveness should feel like peace. It shouldn't feel like suppression. It shouldn't feel like superiority. It shouldn't lead to anxiety or to a feelings of superiority and resentment. forgiveness should bring more peace to you. And if it doesn't, don't do it yet. It's always important that you feel safe. And it's important that if you are forgiving somebody who has wronged you, and it's important to remember that, like if you are forgiving somebody, they've wronged you. So if you are upset about it, you have a right to be. If you want to hold on to it for a little bit longer because you don't understand it, great, hold on to it, keep walking through. And at some point when it feels peaceful to let it go, you will. But forgiveness should feel peaceful, and it should be done on your timeline. So again, my question for you, or my task, is to ask yourself the question, what boundary do I need to create in order to forgive? And boundaries are a good thing. Boundaries are not walls. Boundaries are boundaries. They are there to keep you safe because your peace is really important. And again, if forgiving somebody brings you more peace, do it. If it makes you feel anxious or resentful, don't do it. Nobody is owed forgiveness. You don't have to forgive people. Nobody is entitled to your forgiveness. So it's important to sit with all the things that you feel and to work through it, to work it out. But again, my question or my little task for you is to ask yourself, what boundary do I need to create in order to forgive? And figure it out for yourself. If something comes to mind, leave it below. Or if you have a story or an experience with forgiveness, leave it below. And also experience within the church, and then the experience of forgiving someone outside the church, because those two things will be different. One of them generally will be a little bit more real than the other. That's me projecting. That's my personal experience. But yeah, as always, would love to hear from you. Ask me questions, share your experiences, and I will continue to share mine. So thank you guys for being here, and I'll see you next time.